Hello and welcome to WNHH Radio's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. Tzipi Shmilovitz makes things tick from our community. She's a national U.S. correspondent for Israel's largest daily newspaper, Yediot Achronot, and she's based right here on Audubon Street. Tzipi has come to the WNHH studio to give us some insight into what our city and our nation looks like through the eyes of someone who's paid to view us from the outside. Welcome to WNHH FM. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a real honor. And I also want to thank Yale New Haven Hospital for providing support for today's program. So, Tzipi, you've been a correspondent for Israel's largest daily in the U.S. for 8 years.
That's true.
And so you've stayed. What is it about covering the United States that keeps you here?
Well, it's probably the most fascinating country in the world. I've always wanted to be here and to write back home from America, about America. So in a way, it's a dream come true. I'm just living the dream.
And why is that? What was it interested you about America?
Well, I grew up in an area where America was something that you only see in the movies.
What area was that?
It was, it was back. It was a long time ago.
I mean, what part of Israel did you grow up in?
I was born in Tel Aviv and grew up in Holon, which is a suburb.
So you didn't grow up at a kibbutz or anything?
No.
Okay, you were kind of in secular Israel.
No, I'm not. I'm a city girl. And when I grew up, America was a movie. We did not know anything. We had to wait for the newspaper to come tomorrow morning to know what happened. I used to like sports, so if I want to know what happens in the NBA, I had to wait 48 hours to know the score.
And did you root for the Knicks or the Nets? Who would you root for?
No, I was a Lakers girl.
Oh, you were a Lakers, okay.
Yes. Yes. That was a long time
And your
ago.
area, Jerry West had already retired, right? And Elgin Baylor and that crew? Because that was my childhood.
No, my childhood. No, it's not my childhood. It's my youth, and it was more Magic Larry Bird.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That was the 80s.
Okay. Yeah, wow. Okay.
And so it was always something. For us in Israel, in that time, America could have been in space. It was the same. And I always wanted to be here, at least for a little while. And it took a long time.
Well, first did you always work as a journalist in your adulthood?
All my life.
And why did you go into reporting?
I don't know, but it's something that I always wanted to do. I think I was in 8th grade when somebody asked me, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, I want to be a sport journalist.
That's how I felt too when I was in 6th grade. I started writing sports, yeah.
I want to be a sport.
They do the best writing, the most kind of like narrative with character and action and drama, you know.
Yeah, and add that I was a girl in Israel in the 80s, probably the most machoist place in the world outside the United States.
Yeah, it is macho there. It is.
So it was very strange for a girl to like sport and to want to be a sport journalist. But that is exactly what happened.
Well, you were in a culture where women, it's given, you serve in the military. I mean, it's really women are tough, right, compared to American women.
I don't know.
I mean, Golda Meir, I think of the prime minister back in the day, you know.
That's true, but it's kind of stereotype, I think.
That's total stereotype.
Yeah.
I'm talking about all women.
That's kind of stereotype. And when I went to the army, most girls did nothing. We made coffee for the generals.
Really?
It's not. Today is different. Today it's completely different. Girls can be pilots.
But you see, we talk about this, because I met you at a forum at Slivka Center. It's funny how we look at each other's cultures, and that's why I used to come on radio. One thing I've always admired about Israel, there are things I don't like about Israeli culture, like, the rules that keep Arabs to be second-class citizens, though I understand it's a different environment. I've always admired the way that everybody serves in the army, even if you're rich, any man or women, and that you have to give years of public service to your nation and be part of that nation. That just seems like a deep and meaningful definition of citizenship.
Yeah, but it's also.
So now, how does it look like from the other side? How am I wrong?
It's a necessity. No, you're not wrong. It's a country that had a long history of wars, and it's a tough neighborhood. Um, we're not saints. We make a lot of mistakes, but it is still a very tough neighborhood. And Israel is you talked about the kibbutz. Israel is one big kibbutz, even if we live in the city. Everybody knows everybody, and every family in Israel knows somebody who died in some war.
Mm.
So there is this togetherness, or at least used to be. That's another thing that is changing now.
So, Tzipi, you came to the U.S. to be a correspondent from the beginning, from
Yes.
Correspondent.
Yes.
And how did that look different here? So we have a country where the rich generally don't go into the army, where it's a volunteer army and basically a last resort for not people without a lot of money, especially brown people don't have a lot of other options. How do you see that when you interview Americans, when you watch our attitudes toward war? Because you came here in the midst of a forever war in Afghanistan and Iraq. How does that different? What do you notice about our national character as a result?
Well, one difference is the fact that Americans, I mean, if until 9/11, and actually since 9/11.
Now, were you here before 9/11?
No.
You were right after 9/11.
No, I was right after.
So that's when we lost our mind for a few months.
Well, understandably so.
I mean, like I know an Israeli in New Haven who got stopped and yelled at for being an Arab at a traffic light and threatened. I mean, for a few months we really went crazy because we lived with what Palestinians, Israelis live with every day, which is the threat that someone could come bomb your house.
Yeah. The thing is that Americans, they don't see war up close. It doesn't happen at home. So you've got a war in Afghanistan and it's been 20 years and most people completely forgot about it. In Israel, you can't forget about a war because it's right here.
How does that affect the way we deal with war when we make decisions as a country? Do you notice anything different about the way we talk about it in the public sphere, how we make our decisions?
Yeah. First of all, very few people really pay the price of war in America. Very few people. It's not a mandatory service. It's only those who goes to fight and their families. And everyone else, they are completely detached. They see things on TV. It looks like a movie. We don't understand that this is our guys and our family. And in Israel, it's completely different. Everybody knows somebody who dies, and you treat it completely different. And sometimes it affects the politics.
How do you think it affects the politics?
Well, when you know a guy who died in a war, or when you know somebody who died in a terror attack, or when you know somebody who lives under rockets, down the south for years, it clouds your mind. You can't think about. It's tough to think about the poor Palestinian who is under occupation and his life miserable. It completely affects the politics, and it affects the way the country thinks in the last.
But are you kind of conversely arguing that if we're more detached from war, we'd have a better ability to think about the victim of military actions?
No, I think you need to know the price of war.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was during the Bush administration where they didn't show the coming home.
They stopped showing the caskets and more.
Yeah.
And under Obama, the increase in drone warfare. So you're not even actually killing anyone.
Exactly.
You can see, you don't feel it. Although there was a great article in the Times Magazine about the psychological effects on the individuals who are unleashing the drone attacks from abroad, and that it's not as antiseptic as we believe.
Yeah, but it saves our guys' lives, and psychologically, that will always be the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it affects everything.
All right, and you're listening to Tzipi Shmilovitz. She's a reporter from Israel's largest daily, Yediot Ahronot. She covers the United States, and she does it from New Haven. That's her base. And she's here talking to us on WNHH-FM's Dateline New Haven at 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. So what are you writing about now? What are you writing about these days in America?
Well, I cover the daily news, which happens all the time. Everything that happens goes back to Israel. Actually, this time, the last few weeks are slower because we have an election back then. So nobody really cares about anything that happens outside Israel.
Except when the two leading candidates, Benjamin
Yeah.
Netanyahu and Benny Gantz, come to America, and one goes to the White House to sign a declaration that the Golan Heights are recognized Israel territory, and they're both addressing the AIPAC convention.
Well, that's still. I think I think it was Henry Kissinger who said that Israel does not have a foreign policy. Israel's foreign policy is a domestic policy, and he was right about that. So
what happened when that election came to the U.S. for 2 days? It was a Sunday and a Monday, I believe. Were you writing about that?
No, I have a colleague. She was in Washington, so I didn't have to deal with that, and that was okay. But yeah, most of the time, what I do is I send every day. I send a couple of items back home about things that happened here. It ranged from politics to really gross yellow tabloids.
Well, I noticed you cover culture and and politics. Like one story of yours that really interested me, and I don't get to read most of them because they're in Hebrew. And I can't read Hebrew, especially without vowels. But did a really interesting interview with Itzhak Perlman, the violinist, in 2016, when he decided not to cancel a symphony concert in North Carolina. Now, just so listeners remember, that was a time when the LGBT bathroom debate was big, right? And they had passed a law that was against transgender people using bathrooms. If I remember that controversy, right? And a lot of artists were canceling business, not just artists, other groups, conventions in North Carolina. Perlman said that the symphony he was performing with shouldn't be blamed for what the government was doing. So he played the concert, but he donated his proceeds to LGBT causes. Now, how did it come about that you decided to interview him? How did you get the interview, and what did you think about all that? I thought it was a great article because that really talked about how culture affects politics.
Well, if I remember correctly, he received a prize in Israel, so that was the trigger for the interview. And I think the thing is that the reason why something like that popped up, especially this last year, because we speak a lot about the BDS.
That's the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, a boycott movement against Israeli occupation of Palestine.
Yeah, and in Israel, even the far lefties oppose the BDS because we think that it's a form of violence. It's economic violence, but it's a form of violence, and you really you punish people who did not do anything. And culture is the way to bring people together. So what he did was great in my eyes. I mean, he didn't want to punish people, but he did something good with the money. And the thing with somebody like Perlman is that he's not really an Israeli. He was born there, and he left when he was very, very, very young. But we still look at him as one of us, as we do with pretty much every Israeli who is doing well.
That's like the kids at my daughter's Jewish day school. For 7 minutes, Natalie Portman went there as a kid.
Exactly.
So now when she gets all these big movie roles, we say there's the Ezra Academy grad.
Yeah. And there's Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman. She is actually an Israeli for real. But again, we didn't make her. She did not become a star because of Israel, but we feel like she's ours.
And you wrote about her again for your Israeli audience in America.
Yeah.
You had a very interesting article about her when Americans of Arab descent were upset at her because she wore a dress at an awards ceremony from a Lebanese fashion designer. Break that down for me. What was that all about?
The thing is that today in the world of social media and in a world that is increasingly divided, you can get away with anything. Like
even, wearing a meat dress.
Even something as innocent, and it's a dress. It's really not such a.
Sometimes people try to make it or like the meat dress that what's her name wore, the famous singer.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I can't remember it.
What do you say, Harry? Lady Gaga, yeah. I mean, that was trying to get attention too. I thought it was kind of funny, actually. As a vegan, I got a kick out of that one. But
Yeah, but it's
but
ridiculous.
was Gal Gadot trying to make a point about cross cultural support by having a Lebanese dressmaker, or she just liked the dress?
I can't speak for her. I think she just liked the dress. But on the other hand, she's been criticized a lot simply because she was in the Israeli army, and that automatically make
I
her.
thought you have to be in the army.
Yeah, yeah, and that automatically make her the face of.
So were people who the Arab Americans and supporters who were mad at her for wearing this dress? Were they mad at her? Or were they mad at the dress designer for allowing her to wear the dress? Who was mad at whom?
Today, I think people are just mad at everybody. I don't think they even know why they're so angry. But she's an Israeli. She wore this dress. It gives everybody enough ammunition to just be mad. And I don't think I think that Gal Gadot she's a very smart young woman. I think she walks a fine line, and I don't think she makes any declaration.
Mm-hmm. Well, those two stories I had not read in the American media. They probably were, but I hadn't read them. But the readers of the largest newspaper in Israel, for which you write, did read it because you chose to write about it. How do you decide what Israelis want to know about America versus what an American readership? Although, do you also have American readers through YNET, the wire service, the English language wire service of your?
Yeah, but it all comes from the Israeli source. So we write for people back home, and it's all about what they want to read.
And what do they want to read about America? And you obviously can understand them because you grew up being interested in America, living outside Tel Aviv.
They want to know everything. The first thing that they want to know is everything that can be somehow connected to Israel. And
that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. And so that's the first thing. And then there's the fame factor. Celebrities, movie stars, singers. Every story that you can define as sexy and juicy.
But they're a print newspaper primarily, aren't they?
It is. Yes, it's a print newspaper.
They're not looking for clicks, but they are looking for circulation.
They're looking for circulation, exactly.
And is it a more liberal to centrist paper?
It's a centrist paper.
Because I know I'm getting to the weeds here, but they figured into one of the scandals of Prime Minister Netanyahu because he was secretly promising them to stop doing what he was doing to help a right-wing paper funded by Sheldon Adelson from America if they would ease up on their coverage. But you haven't eased up because in this election campaign, I've noticed that he's pretty mad at you guys. He threatened you about your coverage about the terrorist attack when he was at the White House, terrorist attack in Israel. They're mad at you. The other day, too, he was really mad. He broke some story about how these fake social media accounts are doing for him, like what they did for Trump in 2016 with making up horrible stories about the opponent. Yeah. So how does that work? Why were they, on the one hand, your publisher? I guess, is it separate from the reporters?
Yeah, one thing is connected to the publisher, and it's the business side.
But the publisher didn't, you never got a message on Audubon Street in New Haven, go easy on Bibi.
No, but I don't write about Bibi that much.
Uh-huh. Now, they really knew Bibi in America. There used to be an older woman in New Haven who had gotten to know him pretty well because her name's Robin Krugman. I remember hearing about Bibi in the 80s. She was saying he's the guy who's going to run the country. He's a real star. He really gets America because he had studied here.
Yeah. He is a real star, and he's well known. I mean, you can't take what he has. But when it comes to the newspaper, to Yediot, if you'll go to just pick a random street in Tel Aviv, take 10 people, ask them what do you think about Yediot. 5 will say that Yediot is pro-Bibi, and 5 will say that they are a lefty, anti-Israel,
so you think your job
anti-Semitic.
right. Everyone's mad at you. Everyone thinks you're for the other one.
Yeah, but everyone's mad about everything in the media.
All right. Well, we're happy about the fact that Tzipi Shmilovitz is with us today on Dateline New Haven and WNHH, your home for community radio at 103.5 FM. We're live streamed at newhavenidpad.org. We're talking about Tzipi's work covering America for the largest print newspaper in Israel, Yediot Ahronot. So one issue you do write about presidential politics campaigns, right? You covered 2012, 2016, and you're going to cover 2020. Are you ready? You psyched or no? It started early.
I'm still exhausted from 2016,
Yeah.
trying to recover. So, yeah.
Well, what does it look like through Israeli eyes on the way the Me Too movement about sexual harassment has come to play such a prominent role in politics? You had Bernie Sanders had some revelations, and now Joe Biden, who really comes from another era, and unlike Bernie, not from the left that started thinking about feminism. And it's coming back to haunt him, the way he put his arms around women's necks or, hands around and gave them unwanted kisses and stuff in the back of the head. What does this look like to you? What does it look like to Israeli, the way we're talking about this?
In a way, we in Israel were way ahead of America in this context. There was a president who went to jail because he was accused of rape.
Who was that?
Moshe Katsav.
Oh, yeah.
He went to jail for sexual assault. There was at least one prominent politician who was a star, Chaim Ramon. He ended his career because he kissed somebody. And that was a long time ago. So we were way ahead of America.
And in society, do women, like one thing women talk about who were talking about Biden, they said, well, because this wasn't like rape, we just didn't think this is something we could talk about publicly. Now it's something we're realizing we should talk about publicly. In Israel, were women talking about this publicly longer? Was it more part of the culture? Like my favorite comment of Golda Meir, the late prime minister, was that if we have a problem because men are sexually attacking women at night, it's men who should have the curfew, not the women.
Exactly.
Does that reflect a fundamental difference in society between the two? Because you said it's a macho culture.
It is a macho culture, but as I said, we held people accountable, at least powerful people. We held them accountable. Now, when the Me Too movement exploded in America, it affected Israel too. There were at least 2 or 3 pretty powerful people who had to step down because they've done things that, yeah, we can have the long debate. Is it rape? Is it sexual assault? Is it not? You do not touch women without their consent. It is what it is, and that's it. And people lost their jobs. And that was the same time when things happened here. So it is affecting Israel. But I think when it comes to politics, actually, I think that we are going backwards a little bit when you have less female representation, both in the Likud and in Kahol Lavan, the new Gantz party. You still have fairly decent representation in the Labour Party, but
the Labour Party has become irrelevant.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, but they're still the third party.
Why is that the society is moving backwards in Israel for political representation of women?
Because I think that in many other ways the society is moving backward, and
is that religious influence or just fear of the hopelessness of peace with the Palestinians? A lot of it is just moving way to the right. It becomes an extremely conservative country with some, blue spots, with some liberals bubbles. So you have your Austins.
Tel Aviv is like, Tel Aviv is like Berkeley in the middle of Oklahoma or something like that.
So, Tzipi, you've seen in America, we just had an election where even though women are still underrepresented in our Congress, they had a wave election with so many women elected. What are you seeing America going in a different direction?
I hope so. I still think that we are way, way, way far from having a female president.
Mm-hmm.
I think that what happened in 2016 had a lot to do with sexism and misogyny, and I can't see it change, at least not in 2020.
What has struck you most about our elections and the way we talk about issues in America? I've heard you talk about in Israel, you feel that the elections have reflected the right-wing turn of the country in general, so that there's no one talks about human rights. What strikes you about the way what we talk about in American elections?
This coming election or the last one?
Either.
Well, I'm more of the side that think that this is a continuous struggle between two Americas that never really got over the Civil War,
Yeah.
and I think this is where we are, and we're going a little backward and a little to the sideways, and I think that's the main thing that
Backwards for the last few years, but over our lifetimes, remarkably forward. When you
that's
think
true.
about gay marriage, and
That's
you're
true.
thinking about African Americans in leadership. Yeah.
That's true. I think that was in 2008 when Obama got elected, and you would think that 50 years earlier he couldn't eat in a restaurant.
Yeah.
That's an amazing progress, and that's the beauty of America. That's why I like it so much,
Why?
or fascinated by the fact that this is a very strange experiment, unlike anything you've seen anywhere in the world. We got a lot of people who you don't think should be living together because they believe in completely different things. Somehow this thing is working. Now it's a glitch, I think. But I still have some hope.
So interesting we said about the Civil War. You were here for 2011, so I assume you covered the election then. Actually, I'm thinking back to the Kerry election when he lost to George Bush, the second George Bush president. They showed the map of the states of who won which states. Then they showed the map of America during the Civil War, and it was like the South had risen again and won the Civil War for that election.
Yeah. And
But then you had Obama who went down and won North Carolina, and now
yeah.
you have, I believe, you're going to get to a point soon where Democrats, even an African American woman, if Stacey Abrams runs for the Senate, is going to win Georgia.
Yeah. And at the same time, Democrats cannot win Ohio anymore.
Right.
So
Unless
this-
Mayor Pete runs or Amy Klobuchar.
but this constant thing about
Yeah.
who is real Americans and coastal liberals.
And remember, it was
you
an
know,
African American Secretary of the State, Republican in Ohio, who was doing the voter suppression, according to critics. That was interesting, keeping African Americans from the polls. You're right; it's a crazy country.
it, it, it is. It is. Coming from Israel, I'm in no position to call any country crazy.
But
But America is crazy. America is crazy. And for me as a journalist, it's interesting. It's fascinating. It's a little too crazy now. I'd, I'd like to get some rest,
uh-huh.
but it's one of the things that makes this country so interesting to me.
Which is the such opposite kind of forces on the same ground.
That every second something can happen.
Mhm.
Now it would be nice if more good things happen, but
I think so many good things happen every day.
Yeah. No, a lot of things happen every day, but we don't hear about them.
Right.
We don't hear about them. And that's another thing within this new media landscape.
Yeah.
You only report about the bad stuff. You exaggerate. It's all about clickbaits.
Yeah.
It's all about, it's not even 15 minutes news cycle. It's 5
15
minutes.
seconds, yeah.
It's 5 minutes news cycle. And everything that is good is just being buried.
Do you go out looking for some good stories to write about, or you think your audience won't care about that in Israel?
Well, that depends. Even if I find a good story, I still need to think about some Israeli angle. I still need to connect it to the readers over there because
That's who's reading it.
I want them to read it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What do you get? What feedback do you get from your readers about what they want to read or what they think your stories about America?
Well, mostly the feedback that I always, sometimes you don't know what works and what doesn't work, and sometimes you get response for stories that you don't even remember you wrote. But mostly you get response when people think that you wrote something that is too lefty.
Mm.
That's mainly, it's
Well,
always
when one looks you up on the internet, really the one sentence that gets repeated more than anything else is something you wrote back like that in 2012. You were writing after the Newtown massacre in the United States, here in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And you wrote about that. You wrote the following sentence that still shows up a lot. People reacted to. You wrote, quote, America is not ready to talk about how it is easier to get a handgun than it is to see a doctor. Not ready to speak about the video games that have extreme violence. It's just willing to sweep up everything under the carpet of tears. Well written. You wrote that from a country where you see guns. When I went to Israel, I saw guns everywhere. Like they were just regular, everyone on the street. But is that just soldiers?
Yeah.
I mean, I was shocked how much I've seen guns more in Israel than I've seen in the U.S. So where were you coming from when you wrote that? Coming from a country where guns are so visible on the street.
We don't have mass shooting.
Right.
At all.
Except for Goldstein.
Yeah. Well, that's terrorism. That's
yeah.
terrorism.
Yeah.
And for a country that is so full of wars, we don't have mass shooting. You don't have somebody going into a school. We have a very, very serious universal background check. You cannot get a gun the way you can in America. No way. And the people that you see on the streets with guns, they all went to the army. They all have license. They all went through a very, very deep background check.
And what if they have been charged with domestic violence, for instance? Can they still carry that gun?
No.
See here, that's the NRA now is trying to fight that.
Here you have so many loopholes and gun shows.
So why do you think that is?
We don't have gun shows in Israel.
What do you think is? How do you explain the difference? What have you noticed?
Well, I think you guys are a little too obsessed with with some part of the Second Amendment. Not even the.
Well, that's a modern.
Not even the entire.
That's
amendment.
a very modern interpretation of the Amendment. It was never until long after you and I were born, that judges believed the Second Amendment meant an individual could just have a gun.
Yeah.
That it really was about a militia. It was about if England's coming, you can have a militia.
Yeah.
And somehow there's some new jurisprudence that now is becoming the majority opinion in our Supreme Court, that somehow that meant that every individual has a right to have, an AR-15 or an AK-47 and just shoot whoever comes near them.
Because at some point, like in everything else, corruption just took over. And now it's all about the NRA and the money that you get from them.
Actually, it's more the people than the money from the NRA, the people that vote, they get to line up for the vote.
Yeah. Yeah, but members of Congress, they get money from the NRA. It's all incredibly corrupt. It's not even about the Second Amendment anymore. It's just about making money.
Do you feel safer here or in Israel?
Good question. Wow. Strangely, I think here.
Because?
Probably because I live in safe places. But yeah, here, because I remember back in the 90s, we had just after the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, we had a whole year of buses being blown up.
Yeah.
Every morning, a bus was blown up. It was probably the worst time of my life.
Mm.
And for years after that, I couldn't get on a bus. It was a real post-traumatic thing. I did not get on a bus for years after that. So, and here, now, I get on a subway and I feel safer here.
You want to hear an irony, how it looks different from different countries? When my daughter was a teenager, she spent a few months studying in Israel from a program called TRI in Jerusalem. And I knew objectively that there's a chance there could be, it was a period when there were terrorist attacks. This was years back. And I felt safer when she was there than here. Even though New Haven's a pretty safe city, we do have street crime. She would walk and, have to walk in some neighborhoods or crazy drivers. Isn't that funny how it looks different?
Yeah, it is. It is funny. I think that when you grow up in Israel,
besides, I felt like Israel understood security and they were going to keep people safe, although you can't stop a bus,
Yeah, exactly. On the other hand, we don't have that higher crime rate in Israel. It's a pretty safe place when it comes to everything but wars.
Yeah. All right, and we're talking about that with Tzipi Shmilovitz, the correspondent, the U.S. correspondent since 2011 for Israel's largest daily newspaper, Yediot Ahronot. She's right here in New Haven, and she's talking to us on Dateline New Haven, the WNHH FM. So, Tzipi, how long have you lived in New Haven?
A year, exactly.
So what brought you here?
Well, to be honest, I lived in New York, which is the better place if you are
Where
a
in New York?
foreign correspondent. Manhattan, Upper West Side.
Oh, that's heaven. That's like living in the old days of in Eastern Europe when you had so many different synagogues to go to and so much culture. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You hear a lot of Hebrew up on the upper, but it's just economic. It just became way too expensive to be there. And
Did you put your finger on a map? Like, where can I move?
nah, not really. I got a lot of friends here.
Oh, you do? How'd that
Yeah,
happen?
they have been my friends from back home, and they moved here a long time ago. They both went to Yale, and they live here. And so I got friends here. It's a nice little city. Um,
I
I
love it. I've been here 40 years.
I like it
I would
here.
never want to live anywhere
Uh,
else.
it it looks like the best solution. It's not too far from New York. I can still go and do my job. So all in all, it's okay.
It's funny. Whenever I love New Haven a lot, and whenever I explain it, I sound like an idiot because I always
Why?
talk about what it's not. I can never explain what I love about it. So I always say, well, it's not overwhelming like New York and Boston, but it's big enough that it has the challenges and the interest and the rubbing up of different kinds of people against each other of a city. So you can get your arms around it, but it's a beautiful place to live and all different kinds of people and great institutions. I love raising my kids here. But yeah, so sort of like you were just saying, it's sort of like not New York, not Boston, but I like that, but it's not boring.
Yeah, it's a great little place. I love it. But it's not New York,
hmm
and I am a New York girl.
Like in New York, like in New Haven, I grew up outside New York. I used to love Greenwich Village, but um, there's more than I can do here. There are more concerts than I want to see sometimes too on the same nights than I could get to. More plays that are great, that you can get to. So, but that's because I'm old. I don't need to be in New York. So what? No, when you came to New Haven, what'd you think? Like I noticed you take some nice pictures on Instagram about the blossoms and things like that. What have you done in New Haven that you've liked?
Well, it's interesting because every time I go to New York to do a story, and I feel like, wow, I miss this place, and then I come back and I feel like, wow, it's nice and quiet here. So I think I like the some sense of quietness. I think it comes with your age.
hmm
At some point, you just want to be, and I like the vibe when the students are here. I get a little depressed when they're not because then it's a ghost town, and I like seeing people on the street. Um,
Do you have a
winters.
favorite restaurant?
Oh, you tricked me now.
I told you it was going to get tough questioning.
I don't remember the name. Um, no, I don't want to get
Was
into
it
it.
Miso on Orange Street?
Yes,
That's what I thought from your Instagram. I thought that's where that was. A lot of people talk about miso.
you've been stalking me.
Yeah. Well, you come on the radio. I got to see what you do.
Yes, yes, excellent ramen.
And any places you like to hear music or see theater or anything like that?
We saw the 12th night
Mm-hmm.
the other week.
Yeah. What'd you think about the Yale rep?
I had a lot of fun. It was great.
The
It
Afro-futuristic. Yeah.
it was nothing like what
So
I
Yale rep is
expected.
an amazing place. I just think they do the greatest kind of cutting-edge plays. They
Yeah,
take a lot of risks, but it's really got a lot of soul.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was it was great. It
That's
was
like my kids grew up here, even though they don't live here now. They say like they got spoiled at how good the theater was here. I used to take them to plays at Yale Rep when they were growing up.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how about live music?
Nah, not too much.
It's not your thing.
It's not. It depends. I'm old. I like the
Yeah.
oldies. This is a cool young place.
Well, I see it's got a whole range, like Cafe 9, which is my favorite place, which is just like the places I used to go in the Village in the 70s. They have a lot of some of the older acts and the cutting edge. College Street Music Hall, which is a wonderful venue for seeing concerts. They have two promoters who work it. One's our age, one's in the 30s, and they get both kinds of bands. Yeah, it's a great. Anyway, we're talking about New Haven there. So, what about the Jewish community in America? What do you notice in covering stories for Israeli audience back home? What have you noticed about America's Jewish community? What strikes you about the differences?
I think that in my 8 years here, I've seen a major shift
Mm.
in the way the Jewish community and Israel interact, and not in a good way. And the fact is that most of the Jewish community in America is liberal. Most of them vote Democratic. Uh, the apolitical bipartisan consensus around Israel kind of broken in the last few years, and I think it's rattled the Jewish community. And when you talk with people, especially in New York, where it's the heart of the Jewish community, uh, you see how concerned and upset they are because they feel that they are being treated like more like we donate money and nobody wants to hear our opinion, and that's it.
Well, there are two sets of issues, right? One is about U.S. Israeli-Palestinian relations and how that ongoing impasse in the occupied territories, and that's generational.
Yeah.
I mean, in America, any Jewish person under 40, unless they're ultra-Orthodox, is going to be very critical of the Israeli government. There's no longer this feeling that you can never criticize Israel, which is sort of my generation's feeling.
That is true.
But the other is religious. So in America, the majority, even though there are a lot of the ones you hear about most are the very ultra-Orthodox, the majority are liberal or conservative, they're Jewish affiliated, and the Israeli rabbinate that kind of runs the country in Israel says we're not Jews.
Exactly.
We can't marry there. We can't, pray at the wall if you're a woman. I mean, they're very much against women
Exactly.
having equal right in prayer. And that seems to me the two dividing points.
That's true. I did a very interesting interview with actor Michael Douglas a few years ago, and he's half Jewish. And he spent most of the interview talking about that.
Which one? Which part?
Why wouldn't you want us in the tent? Just because I'm half Jewish, just because only my father was Jewish, so I'm not Jewish. Why won't you want? He said that it would seem to me that at the time when anti-Semitism is on the rise, Jewish people would want as many people as possible
what do you say to him
inside
about
the
that?
tent. No, he was right.
Well, but then you have, I know women who have been involved in a group called Women the Wall. So they go to Israel, they want to pray at the Western Wall.
Exactly.
And they have bags of feces thrown at them by ultra-religious Jews, ultra-Orthodox Jews who feel like that's an abomination to have a woman at the men's section. And the government, while I'm sure the people around the government don't want to support that, they have to because of the influence of religious parties. And they've protected the women even when the Supreme Court, they haven't protected the women even when the Supreme Court says they should. How does that get resolved?
I don't know. I think the only way it gets resolved is by people voting in a different way, and not giving the power religious right so much power,
which they have in this country too.
Yeah.
And Tzipi Shmilovitz, the last few minutes here, you cover United States, based in New Haven for Yediot Ahronot, the largest circulation print daily in America. One thing you've covered since you've gotten here is the rise of this issue, BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions. It's a movement to boycott Israeli products and Israeli business to try to press the Israeli government not to occupy the Gaza Strip and West Bank. And what have you noticed about how that's playing out? Because that's been a big issue in the last few weeks in America.
I think, to be honest, I think that we give oxygen to a movement that is not that big and should not be that important, and it probably would be better to ignore. But it's good. It's good politics to make them be a big deal.
Well, there was a great article on this in Times Magazine last Sunday. I don't know if you read it, about how it's played such a big role in American politics and split the Democratic Party. So the Republican right, fueled by the Christian right, who believes that they have to support Israel against Palestinians to bring on end times, as predicted in the Book of Revelations. And a lot of right-wing Jews have embraced them. I asked Joe Lieberman, who was a U.S. Senator, and one of my friends, we'd say to him, well, why are you hanging out with these right-wing evangelicals like John Hagee, who say Jews have no soul, who want to bring about the revelation, and then the end part of the revelation is once they kill all the Palestinians, then they kill any Jews who don't convert to Christianity in the end. And his answer was, well, we think we're not going to get to that last point.
Exactly.
In other words, we don't believe in this revelation, so we'll use their support now, support the U.S. government against the Palestinians.
Exactly.
How does that look like to Israeli eyes?
It's all politics and cynicism. The thing is that BDS is the one thing that I think does unite people in Israel from both sides, because if somebody like, I don't know, Roger Waters or any other
From Pink Floyd,
big, decide not to come, he punishes ordinary people.
But that same arguments were used against the boycotts against South African apartheid.
Yeah.
And in America against white businesses that went to serve black customers the same way.
Yeah.
Why is it different in Israel?
The difference is that nobody in Israel think about Israel as an apartheid state.
Is it?
Not yet, but...
So why wouldn't a boycott be an effective way to put that pressure, to stop it from being that?
Because obviously it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Have you seen any change? If anything, the government went even further to the right.
Well, now you got the big debate is about these bills. There's a law in Texas, and now Marco Rubio has proposed one for the U.S. government that would stop anyone from getting a contract with the government unless they sign an oath that they will not boycott Israel.
Do you think it's going to hold up in any court?
Well, the judges have changed.
That's true.
It wouldn't have held up in any court prior to 2019.
That's true.
But what do you think? That's really divided Jews. There are a lot of people say we support Israel. A lot of people say we oppose BDS. But this goes against the fundamental nature of boycott. And it's really turned black Americans who are active in politics against Israel.
Yeah.
Because they say we boycotted in the South, and we were stopped by these same forces from government, forces from boycotting injustice in the South and in South Africa. So why is this different?
That's a good question. I think that what they're trying to do, and I don't think that anyone in the Republican Party cares whether black activists love Israel or not. I think what they want is to divide the Jewish vote. And if they can decrease the voting rate of Jewish people who usually goes Democratic, that's enough. It's all cynic politics.
So, and thanks so much for spending time with us today, Tzipi Shmilovitz. Tell me before we leave, what are your plans? Are you hoping to hunker down here for a while, continue watching this craziness in America and writing it for people back in Israel?
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, that's.
Do you want to settle here?
Yes, for now, yeah.
You wouldn't want to go back and live where you grew up?
You know, every time I go back to visit, I feel more and more like a stranger.
Huh.
It's still home. It's still my place. I still have family and friends. I love the food. I love the weather.
I like the food too.
The food is the best in the world.
It's good for a vegan.
It's the best in the world. It's still where I came from. You cannot change that. But as the longer you're outside and the quicker the country changed, when you go back, you feel strange.
All right. Well, then we'll welcome you as an American and a New Havener.
Thank you.
You've passed the ultimate New Haven test. You've been on an episode of Dateline New Haven on WNHH-FM. So thanks so much today for joining us, Tzipi Shmilovitz from Yediot Achronot. Follow her on the web. Just look her up. You'll read some great articles. Thanks to the Yale New Haven Hospital for providing support for today's program. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience, performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long here at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.